Narcissists lose leverage the moment the other person stops giving automatic emotion, yet never turns fully cold. The person who faces a narcissist and keeps a measured presence begins to notice the shift. Ordinary people either explode with feeling or shut down into total silence. Both extremes hand over power. The person who stays strategic gives only what the moment requires and nothing more. The brain of the narcissist registers the controlled limit as a new kind of scarcity. That scarcity creates the first real pressure. The pressure starts with the loss of easy extraction. Narcissists measure their force by how quickly they can pull a reaction. When the reaction arrives only in short measured form and then stops, the measurement fails. The nervous system that expects either full engagement or full withdrawal now receives a precise middle that it cannot control. The result is an urgent need to push harder for more. The need grows as the measured response stays consistent. The person who stays strategic never feeds the need past the limit. Every insult receives a brief factual reply and then ends. Every charm attempt receives a short acknowledgement of any real content and then ends. Every guilt move receives a calm restatement of the boundary and then ends. The narcissist watches the tools produce only limited results. Limited results force the system to confront its reduced reach. Reduced reach is the core fear. What the narcissist fears most is the permanent state in which emotional levers still exist but no longer deliver full control. That state arrives through deliberate steps that keep presence without surrender. The first step is the refusal to match intensity. When the narcissist raises volume, the other person keeps a steady, even tone. When the narcissist drops into soft concern, the other person keeps the same steady tone. Matching never happens. The brain expects emotional mirroring as proof of full connection. When mirroring is limited, the proof weakens. The weakening creates rising internal pressure. That pressure shows in the next move the narcissist makes. The move is often a test designed to force either explosion or total freeze. A carefully chosen comment about the other person's past failure or private weakness appears. Ordinary instinct is to defend with heat or to go completely silent. Both create the extreme the narcissist can use. The strategic person answers with one short factual correction and then returns to the original topic. No heat, no freeze. The comment ends. The narcissist is left holding a tool that produced only a controlled reply. The limited reply feeds a deeper fear. Narcissists fear losing the ability to dictate the emotional range of the exchange. Full control requires the other person to swing between high feeling and total absence. When the other person stays in a narrow, measured band, the range collapses. Special status needs that range to prove superiority. When the range stays narrow, the status has less support. The support weakens in real time. The person who stays strategic watches the weakening without comment. Comment would expand the range again. The measured limit keeps the weakening going. The mindset required to reach this state is absolute control of dosage. The person treats every rising emotion as a resource that can be spent only in exact measured amounts. The mind stays fixed on one rule. Give the minimum required by the facts and then stop. This rule is not soft. It is a cold calculation of attention as currency. The person who adopts it begins to see the narcissist as a system that runs on unlimited extraction. The system is predictable. Predictable systems lose force when the currency is rationed. Emotional intelligence is the tool that makes the dosage possible. Emotional intelligence here is not warmth or empathy. It is the capacity to detect the exact moment an extraction attempt begins, and to choose the precise size of response before the body takes over. The person who has this capacity notices the first tightness in the chest or the first heat in the face. The notice happens without judgment. The notice is followed by a deliberate choice of one short, factual sentence, and then silence. The choice keeps the emotion from becoming full supply. Real-world arguments show the difference in clear steps. In a workplace meeting, a narcissistic coworker mocks a proposed idea in front of the group. The ordinary response is to defend with rising voice or to go silent and absorb the hit. Both extremes hand over emotional energy. The group watches the exchange, and the narcissist gains status from the visible swing. The person with the required mindset does something different. The person states the next fact of the proposal in the same even tone, and then asks the next logistical question. The face stays neutral. The body stays still. The mockery receives a controlled factual reply and then ends. The group notices the limited impact. The narcissist's status drops because the expected full drama never arrives. The drop is permanent for that meeting. The controlled response in that meeting follows exact steps. The body first signals heat or the urge to defend. The signal is noticed and labeled as data. The label stops the path into full anger or full freeze. Attention locks onto one concrete fact that still needs to be stated. That fact is spoken in the same volume and pace used for any other update. The sentence ends. No extra words follow. The face does not change. The body does not lean forward or pull back. The limited reply is complete. The narcissist's nervous system waits for the usual expansion and receives none. The weight itself becomes pressure. The same pattern appears in a family dinner argument. A narcissistic relative brings up an old personal failure and frames it as concern. The ordinary response is to feel the old shame and either apologize with heat or shut down completely. Both choices restore the relative's position as the one who controls the full emotional climate of the table. The person who stays strategic answers with a short factual correction and then returns to the previous topic. No apology, no freeze, no change in tone. The relative escalates. Escalation meets the same measured reply. The table begins to treat the relative's words as limited noise rather than full control. Limited noise is ordinary. Ordinary status is the fear that drives the next surge. In the family setting, the controlled response is even more precise. The relative says the failure shows lack of gratitude. The strategic person hears the words and feels the first tightness. The tightness is labeled as data. One short sentence follows. The sentence names the actual current boundary in plain words. The sentence ends. The relative raises volume and repeats the old story. The strategic person restates the same boundary once more in the same even tone, and then asks a neutral question about the food or the next family plan. The question moves the conversation. The old story is left without further fuel. The relative system registers the sudden limit as loss. Loss aversion drives the next push. The next push meets the same closed limit. Keeping emotions in order during these moments follows a fixed internal sequence. The sequence begins the instant the body signals threat. The signal is heat, tightness, or the urge to speak faster or to stop speaking at all. The person who has trained the sequence notices the signal and labels it as data rather than command. The label stops the automatic path into either explosion or total coldness. Attention then moves to one external fact that must still be handled. The fact becomes the only content allowed in the short reply. The emotion stays inside and is spent only in the exact measured amount required. The offering never exceeds the limit. This sequence is the practical form of emotional intelligence under pressure. Emotional intelligence allows the person to map the narcissist's next likely move, while the body remains steady. Mapping happens without personal investment. The map shows that the narcissist will increase volume or switch to charm when the first limited reply fails. The map prepares the next measured response before the increase arrives. Preparation removes surprise. Surprise is what turns a signal into either uncontrolled reaction or rigid freeze. In a private partner confrontation, the pattern repeats with higher intensity. The narcissistic partner accuses the other of coldness or lack of care after a period of reduced contact. The ordinary response is to explain with feeling or to go completely silent and create distance that feels like rejection. Both extremes restart the full supply cycle. The person with the required mindset states the current boundary once in flat language and then stops speaking. The partner escalates to tears or to rage. Tears and rage meet the same measured restatement if needed, and then silence. Silence confirms that the emotional door opens only to the exact limit. The confirmation produces the visible agitation that reveals the dependence. The controlled response in the private confrontation is built the same way. The accusation lands. The body signals the urge to justify or to withdraw completely. The signal is labeled as data. One short sentence is chosen. The sentence names the factual limit on contact or on the topic. The sentence is spoken once. The partner's tears or raised voice follow. The strategic person does not match the tears with comfort and does not match the voice with silence that feels like abandonment. If a second statement is required, it is the exact same sentence repeated in the same tone. Then the conversation ends by returning to a neutral task or by physical exit. The partner is left with the unfinished need for full emotional return. The unfinished need becomes the open loop that consumes attention. The importance of emotional intelligence becomes clear in the speed of detection. Without it, the body swings to one extreme or the other before the mind can intervene. With it, the detection happens early enough to keep the response inside the measured band. Measured response never becomes full supply. Full supply is what the narcissist requires to maintain the false self. When full supply is denied across repeated arguments, the false self begins to starve in real time. Public settings amplify the effect. In a group project discussion, a narcissistic colleague claims credit for work done by others and then dismisses any correction as insecurity. The ordinary response is to list the actual contributions with rising frustration or to stay silent and let the claim stand. Frustration hands the emotional stage back. Silence hands the status. The person who stays strategic simply restates the documented facts in the same tone used for any other update, and then moves to the next agenda item. The group sees the facts stand with controlled presence. The colleague's claim loses weight because no full emotional contest and no total absence appears. The absence of extremes is the power shift. The controlled response in the group setting follows the same internal steps under higher visibility. The claim is heard. The body signals the urge to defend with heat or to stay silent and absorb the loss of credit. The signal is labeled. One short restatement of the documented dates or contributions is spoken. The tone matches the rest of the meeting. The sentence ends. The colleague pushes again with the insecurity label. The strategic person does not answer the label. The strategic person simply moves to the next agenda point in the same even tone. The group registers the limited exchange. The limited exchange reduces the colleague's standing without a contest that could be claimed as victory. The mindset that supports this behavior treats residual feeling as a liability that must be ended without turning into coldness. Residual feeling is the leftover tension that stays after an interaction. Ordinary people carry residual feeling and either replay the argument with heat or shut down into rigid distance. Both keep the narcissist inside the mind. The person who defeats the narcissist ends the internal replay the moment the interaction ends by moving attention to the next external task. The move is active rather than frozen. The narcissist is left holding the unfinished loop alone. The unfinished loop continues to consume the narcissist's mental resources while the other person remains free of it, yet still flexible. Emotional intelligence makes the ending of residual feeling possible without rigidity. It allows the person to recognize that any continued internal dialogue is another form of supply given in private. Recognition stops the dialogue. The stop is deliberate and repeated until the body no longer generates the leftover tension. The body stays available for other interactions rather than locked in coldness. In a neighborhood dispute, a narcissistic neighbor escalates a small boundary issue into personal attack. The ordinary response is to match the personal tone with heat or to walk away in total silence that feels like rejection. Matching restores the emotional exchange. Total silence can be used as proof of coldness. The person who stays strategic answers only the factual boundary once, and then ends the conversation with a calm statement that the matter is closed. The neighbor continues speaking. The continuation meets no further reply. The lack of further reply forces the neighbor to confront the sudden limit. The limit is processed as loss. Loss heightens the next attempt. The next attempt meets the same measured close. The controlled response in the neighborhood exchange is exact. The personal attack is heard. The body signals heat or the urge to leave without words. The signal is labeled. One short sentence names the factual property line or the agreed rule. The sentence is spoken once. The neighbor raises volume and adds more personal words. The strategic person repeats the same factual sentence once if needed, and then states that the matter is closed. The body turns or the conversation ends. No further engagement follows. The neighbor's system registers the hard stop after limited contact. The stop is not total absence. The stop is a closed limit after a measured reply. The combination creates confusion that full silence or full fight would not produce. The sequence of measured closes builds a permanent asymmetry. The narcissist's nervous system remains fixed on the person who still responds, but only within strict limits. The strategic person's nervous system remains fixed on external tasks and stays open to other contacts. The one-sided fixation is the source of lasting power without the cost of becoming cold. What the narcissist fears most in the face of repeated, measured responses is the complete absence of full emotional reach combined with the continued presence of limited contact. Full reach is how the false self measures continued dominance. Without full reach yet with the other person still visible, the false self has no clean narrative of rejection or victory. The fear of this unclear middle produces one last surge of either extreme charm or extreme attack. Both are met with the same measured factual response and then the close. The surge fails. Failure at this stage removes the final illusion that any tool can restore unlimited control. The deeper pattern that emerges is the recognition that every argument is only a request for proof of unlimited emotional availability. Proof was once given automatically through full reaction or full withdrawal. When reaction is permanently limited to the exact factual minimum, the request has nothing left to expand into. The person who understands the request for what it is never again mistakes the demand for real power. That understanding produces the final internal state. The person moves through required contact with no residual tension and no rigid freeze. The body stays calm because the nervous system is no longer preparing for either explosion or total shutdown. Calm with continued measured presence is itself a signal. The signal tells the narcissist that no further tool will restore full control. The signal is never explained. Explanation would expand the range. The measured limit keeps every channel restricted. The last fear that settles is the fear of permanent reduced relevance. Reduced relevance is the opposite of the special status the system requires. When every emotional pathway has been limited and stays limited, full dominance becomes impossible. The brain registers the permanent limit as a form of ongoing social constraint. The constraint produces a lasting contraction that no amount of later charm or rage can fully reverse. The contraction is the end of the old power arrangement. The person who remained strategic never forced the outcome with coldness. The outcome arrived through the simple ongoing refusal to give more than the exact minimum the facts required. The refusal is quiet. The refusal is permanent. The refusal leaves the narcissist without unlimited leverage, while the other person continues, flexible and unaffected. The mindset that sustains this state is the continuous treatment of emotion as a controlled resource that can be spent in precise doses rather than an automatic full response or full freeze. The resource is never spent where it can be collected without limit. The person who masters the treatment turns every argument into a demonstration of the narcissist's dependence on extremes. The demonstration requires no announcement. The demonstration works through the steady presence of measured limits. Emotional intelligence remains the operating system that keeps the treatment precise. It detects the extraction attempt at the first signal. It chooses the exact size of reply before the signal becomes either heat or freeze. It ends residual feeling the moment contact ends without locking the body into coldness. The precision creates the permanent asymmetry that the narcissist cannot reverse. The asymmetry is the final position. The narcissist continues to operate according to the same fixed needs for unlimited reaction. Those needs are simply no longer met in full. The system runs out of the full fuel it requires and must seek it elsewhere. The person who stays strategic is no longer a source of that full fuel. In another workplace example, the narcissist interrupts a presentation with a sudden question meant to expose a gap. Ordinary people feel the exposure and either over-explain with rising speed or freeze and lose the floor. Both give the emotional mark. The strategic person pauses for one breath, labels the internal heat as data, and answers with a single factual point that closes the gap. The answer ends. The presentation continues at the same pace. The interruption receives a controlled close rather than a full contest or full collapse. The room registers the limited exchange. The limited exchange reduces the force of the interruption. The same controlled sequence appears when the narcissist later claims the idea was improved by the interruption. The strategic person hears the claim. The body signals the urge to correct with force or to stay silent. The signal is labeled. One short restatement of the original documented point is spoken if required. Then the conversation moves on. No extended defense follows. The claim is left without the fuel of a full emotional reply. The absence of fuel keeps the claim small. Across every setting, the controlled response stays the same in structure. Notice the body signal. Label it as data. Choose the minimum factual sentence. Speak it once in even tone. End the sentence. Refuse to expand. Move attention to the next external fact or task. The structure is repeated until it becomes automatic. The automatic structure is what the narcissist cannot break. The structure is what keeps power without the cost of becoming cold.